exciting time of year because we get to put the plants in the ground finally. So one of the biggest things that's so important right now, we've been having a extremely hot week. So whether you're planting the plants in the ground this weekend or whether you're going to keep them, I have some seedlings here, whether you're going to keep them in the cups and plant them later on next weekend or during the week, they need a lot of water. They're going to dry out when they're in the cups like this. They dry out especially quickly. So give them lots of water. But with the watering, because the heat is so intense, you want to water them really, really well first thing in the morning, and then water them really well in the late afternoon, early evening, or later evening. You don't want to water them during the hottest time of the day for a number of reasons, but the biggest one is that you can shock them. So when we're explaining this to the kids, we always talk about, ask them if any of them have ever had brain freeze before. You know, when it's a really hot day and you get a really nice cold icy drink and you drink it too fast and it shocks your system. It's the same with the plants. So if you give them lots of water first thing in the morning or late afternoon, early evening, when the sun is when it's starting to get cool, that's going to keep your plants a lot happier. So we have a couple of plants here. I have an eggplant that I'm going to plant today, some kale, some basil, Italian sweet pepper, and I have a nice tomato plant that I want to do right at the end because tomatoes are a really special plant. There's a trick with them that's unique to just tomatoes. So the first thing you want to do is gently, I'm just squeezing the cup down near the bottom to gently loosen it. You don't ever want to grab the plant and try to pull it out because sometimes the stem will break. So you just flip it over and just gently squeeze the container until it comes out. A lot of times if they've been in a container for too long, you'll see that the roots are all bound together. So we do something that's called tickling the roots, and all I'm going to do with my little finger nail here is just slowly go around, and it's almost like you're tickling the plant. And this is just going to loosen up the roots so that they're open and they can start to spread out when you put them in the ground. If you leave them all tangled together, sometimes the plant doesn't do very well and you can dig it up a month later and it's still in that initial ball because the roots were all tangled and they couldn't spread their wings. So you don't want to lose a lot of the soil. So you can see that basically all the soil is still there, but I've just kind of loosened it up so the roots are nice and able to, they're free, they're no longer tangled together, and then when that goes in the ground, it's going to be able to spread itself out. The next thing I'm going to do is dig a nice hole. So there's no real trick to it. I like to dig it big, like if this is the size that we're doing, make the hole at least double what the root of the plant is, and it's nice to make the soil nice and loose around the roots, so you can just take a little bit of time and work it up. If you come across any worms, I just saw a couple of worms. That's exciting. The plants sure love the worms, so keep them down there. So I'm just going to take the plant, drop it in the hole. This is not a good angle. You want the top part of the plant where you're planting to be at the same level as the soil. So you don't want to bury it and have the soil come up on the stem, and you don't want to plant it like this and then part of the top is sticking out of the ground. Can you guys see that? You don't want it like that. So you want the soil to be flush with the top of where the roots start. So I have my hole here. I'm going to gently put it down and then just gently move the soil back in around the plant. You can give it a little tap and you can see how the soil here is flush. It's at the same level as the top of the soil in the plant. So the next thing I'm going to do is give it a really nice water, but I'll do the same with, let's plant the pepper. I'm not making a whole lot of space between these because I know that this kale is gonna grow straight up. It might get to be about this big. And same with the pepper, it doesn't need a whole lot of room to move. So same thing, just dig a nice hole, loosen up the soil so it's nice and loose. You don't want to put little clumps right against the roots. I mean, you can, but I think the plants are happier when the soil is nice and loose and easier to move through. So again, I'm going to flip it upside down and just put pressure here. Just squeeze at the bottom and it just slid out into my hand. And again, you can see how those roots are all bound at the bottom. So we're just going to gently tickle them. It's kind of a nice visual, just tickling the plant. So we're loosening them up and it's going to be a lot easier for them to spread themselves out when they're in the ground. Can you see that? So we're just freeing them. Okay, and then same thing. I have my hole here. So I'm just going to set it in, gently push the nice broken up dirt back around, and you want it to be nice and flush. Flush just means even, right? So part of it isn't sticking on top and part of it isn't too far down. It's nice and even with the garden. And that's that. And then the next important thing is watering, especially right now. So it's 7 o'clock at night, it's nice and cool, the sun is setting. I'm gonna give these guys lots of water because they had a really hot day, and I've just transplanted them, which is a bit of a shock. So I want to give them a nice drink, help them to have a good night tonight. Okay, and I'm basically going to do the same with all of the other ones that I'm doing. I'm gonna plant some basil, some peppers. This was an eggplant that I just planted. I hope I said that. I may have called it a pepper, but it's an eggplant. The last thing that I want to show you though is this tomato plant. So you see how huge it is. Tomatoes have a very special feature where when you plant them, you can dig them really far down into the garden. So with all the other ones, we were making them flush. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just squeeze the bottom of the container to loosen it. Nice and loose. You can see the roots are all bound, so we're going to tickle them. But when we do the tomato plant, instead of making it flush here, I can actually bury it all the way up to the top. You can bury it along the stem because tomato plants have the ability to grow new roots out along the stem. So when I look at a tomato plant like this, it's so tall that if it got, if we ended up getting a lot of wind in the next little while, this stem is so tall that it might snap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bury it probably halfway up the stem. That's going to mean it's going to develop a lot more roots and there won't be as much sticking up out of the ground. So it's going to make the plant a lot stronger. Please don't do this with any other plant. Only the tomatoes have this feature. If you bury other plants up the stem, they will die. So I'm going to tickle the roots, loosen them up so that they can spread out and be super happy. And I'm going to dig a hole right now and then turn the camera back on. Okay, so I just dug a very big hole. You can see how deep down it goes. That's because our tomato plant is so big. So instead of keeping it flush, I'm going to put it all the way down in the hole, and I'm going to bury it all the way up the stem. Now, some people pinch off the leaves, some people don't. I'm not aware of whether one method is better than the other. You just saw that I buried the leaves. You could try some of your tomato plants pinching off the leaves and leaving some of them and see if you notice a difference. But that is our tomato plant. And then I'm going to give him lots of water. And look forward to some nice healthy plants this summer. I hope you guys have a wonderful time planting your gardens. Please send us pictures of your gardens. We love seeing what our families are growing. And I hope this video was helpful. Happy gardening.